Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to our webinar series on what makes a great framework for building career paths. So today, this is I think our fourth webinar for the year. We're on a bit of a roll and we're really enjoying meeting with you on a monthly basis. If you've got any feedback as you go, any topics that you'd like us to be considering as we build our next year's worth of content, please don't hesitate to give us drop us a line. Today joined by myself, Janine Waters. I'm a partner here at BDO and I head up our People Advisory practice in Sydney. We also have Marianne Carter here, also in People Advisory, and Callie Mitchell, who is also in the room. And we'll all be talking to you today about our experience in building great career pathways. A few housekeeping items I want to quickly chat to you about. For those of you who've been on our webinars before, you'll know the drill by now, but for those of you who are new, you can access the presentation slides in the handout pane, as you can see in the example there to the right. Any submitted questions will be responded to via email after the session concludes, or you're more than welcome to just contact us directly. If you're experiencing technical difficulties, you can see the link there, so go to that support log me in Inc. After the webinar, you're going to be sent a follow-up email containing the presentation slides, a link to the recorded session, so you can listen to this in the car on the way home or at any other time that you want to come back to it. You can also access our past webinars and see the other content that we've shared this year, and our contact details will also be sent to you. So do feel free to contact us directly if there's any more information we can help you with. So what we want to talk to you today is really the objective of building a career path. And sorry, we always have an issue every time, don't we? By the time we hit our 12th, we'll be fine. So we wanted to talk to you about the objective of building a great career path and why people do it. So the first and key reason for it that we talk to people about all the time is that they want to retain the right talent. So you have great talent in your organisation, they're ambitious, they want to grow, they want to do new things, and one of those key opportunities for them is that they want to know, well, where's their next job and where's their next opportunity. So that's a really critical point to the pathway. The second thing is around developing new skills, perspective and judgment. We know from all of the research that one of the most impactful ways to learn is on the job. Yeah. You and I have all gone to different programs where you get a great folder full of fascinating information. I went on one only a couple of weeks ago. It was fantastic. I remember loving it. And then the next day somebody said to me, so Janine, what did you cover? And my mind went blank. Yeah. So we know that to learn, you really need to do.
Janine, you're talking about something quite different here, in that if you think about how some people think about moves and promotions or moves laterally, people feel like they need all the skills before they move.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about here is actually what you need is maybe just a want or a passion, and then you go in or you lean in to actually learn.
Yes.
Instead of going to a course or in addition to.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think that's that real key balance that you're talking about there, which is, you know, for some people, it'll be, I need to have it all before I move. And for other people, it'll be that really good thinking around, I've got some of it, but where am I going to learn the next part of what I need to get to the ultimate role that I'm trying to achieve? And that next part is taking on different challenges and different roles.
So I think it's important for those of us on the webinar that are line managers to just think about, if you've got people in your team that want it and don't necessarily have all the skills, that's okay.
Yes.
As long as you invest and support them, let them do something different, because it actually helps you build your capability within your organisation.
Exactly right. And if I think about how that works in our team, we'll often be taking on a new challenge and the first conversation is, this is new, how are we going to do it?
Yeah.
And the process of thinking through that is actually how we're growing and developing.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really important to us when we talk about career paths is enabling people to work to their strengths. And we're going to talk a little bit through today's webinar around the traditional concept of career pathing. And what we often talk about there, and you'll hear this all the time, they talk about it as the Peter Principle. I'm not quite sure who Peter was, but the Peter Principle talks about that you keep promoting people because they're really good at what they do, and finally you promote them beyond their strengths, and you promote them into a role that they can no longer be successful in. And when I look at good career paths are actually making sure that people are doing the jobs that work to their strengths. And those strengths are not just what they're good at. Those strengths are what they're passionate about, what gives them energy. So when you've got someone who is amazing at selling, let's just say, because there's most of our jobs would have some sort of a selling role in them. You look at someone who's amazing at selling and they love going out and building relationships with clients, so you promote them to a sales manager, and all of a sudden the thing that they love to do is no longer the core part of their role. Actually what they're now trying to do is develop a team, and it's a completely different skill set. Now for some people that might be absolutely the right move, but when you're looking at career paths, it's really making sure that as you're developing people through the organisation, you're making sure that you're enabling them to work to those strengths.
Lovely.
So why does it matter? Why do you even need to think about career paths in an organisation? First of all, your employees are wanting something different. People see internal movements happen due to tenure or title or internal politics, and what we see all the time is that can have such an impact on an organisation's culture. But people feel frustrated about, if I'm not the in-person here, if I'm not the person who's been around the longest, even though I might be great at what I do, I get stuck and I don't get that opportunity.
That's actually quite disheartening. So if you're someone that doesn't necessarily connect very quickly with people, but you are amazing at what you do, you really hope that there are leaders in your organisation that can see beyond just the people connection and go, actually, this person does a great piece of work. We need to allow them to grow so that they can do more of this great stuff. And what becomes disheartening is if you're not the person that can connect, you see people around you getting opportunities because of the internal politics. And what can happen is some good competencies actually start to leave your organisation because the way that we operate is often who's front of mind, who's out there asking the questions. And so to be able to know when you're looking at talent, to be able to look at your people in a different way. I'm not saying people that connect are not good at their job. Absolutely. A lot of them are, but I'm just saying it's not just one lens you should look at.
And I think what you're saying is people who aren't great at connecting doesn't necessarily mean they don't have amazing strengths that you want to harness.
Exactly. And some of them can actually be brilliant line managers.
Exactly right. They just might connect differently to how you have experienced good connection in the past. One of the things that I used to find often when I was a HR manager was this whole concept of, I would see certain behaviours in an individual and think, oh, they're amazing. I mean, and we'd talk about promoting them and we'd promote them. And then I'd have somebody who was else in the organisation come and say, we can't believe you promoted this person. Didn't you see all of these other behaviours? Or didn't you notice that this is what happens? And what you find, in where you get to some roles is people manage up really well. They manage their impressions really well in terms of how they present to people who have influence over them. And in actual fact, how they operate differently for other people in the organisation is really impactful for those other people. So it's being able to make sure you kind of try to remove some of those blinkers sometimes in looking at people and look underneath for what's really important. That's also really important to understand. Not everybody wants to move up the ladder. Especially, I think, more and more these days, people have a really different view of what a great career can look like. And we have conversations all the time with people. They want to move laterally, they want to develop, they want to have specialty skills, and they do want to be rewarded for it. They may not necessarily want to be your next sales director or your next HR director or your next MD, but they want to be rewarded for the amazing skills that they bring. And you as an organisation actually need those skills. Not everybody is going to be your next leader, but you do need some of these skill sets to stay in your organisation.
And what's interesting is if you think about it in the old sense, when you moved up is when you would get a pay increase.
Yes.
But what people are saying now is, yeah, I don't want to move up, I want to move sideways.
But I still want the pay increase.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I still want the pay increase because I'm now doing different things and I'm going to give you a lot more than what you think I'm going to be giving you.
And if your career paths can't factor that in, if you
Yeah.
have a really, a really
Linear.
simple, linear, not just career path, but even your other mechanisms that support that, like your compensation structures,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're finding you get this discussion around, well, but you're in this band and therefore we can't increase your salary. If you calculated how much you lose when that person leaves the company, the knowledge they take with them, the capabilities that they take with them, because you don't have a structure that's flexible enough to reward what's important to your business, then it really limits your ability to grow as an organisation.
And I will say, as an employee, if you're hearing that from your line manager, oh, I can't because the band is this, it's
completely disenfranchising.
Very disenfranchised. It's like, oh, okay, so you don't have much pull, you don't value what I have.
Yeah.
What would a few $1,000s do to your bottom line? Not much, but it could do a lot for somebody who's going to be giving you even more of what they've got and learning.
It is really interesting because I think people have a very simplistic view when they think about how much an employee costs them when they leave. And they think about, it might cost me $20,000 to in consulting fees to hire somebody else. When you actually look at what you lose when somebody leaves, it's massive. It's more like 2.5 times their annual salary.
It is 2.5 times their annual salary.
So when you think about it that way, all of a sudden, a 5% pay increase to make somebody feel valued and to help continue to move them in a way that utilises their strengths really doesn't seem like a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
So the other thing people are looking at, they want different experiences and they want the ability to be challenged. Again, we talk a lot about millennials and the new, but people grow up with a really different perception of what their career is going to look like.
Yeah.
And you don't have people who are looking for a job for life. You have people who are coming to work every day and they're thinking, if I'm going to spend all of this time in a workplace, I want to spend it doing something that's going to challenge me. I want to spend it doing something that's going to really speak to my abilities. Retaining talent really does come down to your ability to ensure you have that learning environment available to them.
This learning environment,
yeah.
Think about a baby that starts to walk for the first time and they fall. When they fall, you're clapping, that's amazing, well done, you've done really well. The baby gets back up again and tries to walk again. What happens in organisations sometimes is that when you make a mistake, all you're hearing about is the mistake, the fall, not the fact that you've taken a step forward and you're trying something new. And this learning environment is actually one of the most powerful shifts if you were to make, to allow people to try something different. Because when they try something different, you're tapping into their strengths, you're building and growing your business. Yeah, there'll be mistakes, we're human. Of course there will be, but it's about what you do with them. What's the learning? It's okay. What do we need to do differently next time? How do you support the person differently next time? And the quicker you do that, the quicker people are going to learn, the more you're going to be getting back, the more deliverables you'll get. So it's really
such a powerful thing to create, and not all. Many organisations really struggle with that.
Yeah.
But I think when you're, assuming that most of the people on the line here are HR professionals or senior managers or leaders in an organisation, you have such an impact on being able to think about, if you're in HR, what are the different mechanisms you're building that help reward that learning environment?
Yeah.
If you're a leader, wow, you have such a huge impact on that. How do you do that in all of the language and how you work with your team in celebrating the falls?
Yeah.
As well as those first steps that everyone's taking when they learn.
And I'm just going to link this to risk culture as well. If you've got a learning culture, you are more likely to raise issues and face into them and move forward.
Yeah.
So it's actually a very wonderful part if you can harness that
as
for your
opposed
business.
To the alternative of sweeping it under the carpet and hoping
Yeah.
nobody trips over it.
Yeah.
We all know that people are one of the biggest costs in an organisation, and we also know they're one of your most significant leverage points. Most of the time, people can at some point copy your product, your website, you know, any of your deliverables. This presentation could be copied and presented by somebody else in the future. What they won't get is the passion that we deliver it with. You know?
Or they might get more passion, quite frankly, because they're building on it.
You know, so your people are your greatest cost, and it makes sense to bring out the most of them. And let's face it, you don't do that with a one-size-fits-all linear. Here's your next 10 years mapped out for your career.
Okay.
So what happens for organisations that are able to unlock people's potential? What does that look like? When you think about organisations that do this, they have a growth mindset. Talk to us, Marianne, about what that growth mindset looks like.
So it is very similar to what I was talking about before, where the baby kind of falls and you all clap and because it's about moving forward.
Yeah.
It's not about getting it right. So many people wake up in the morning and they want to do a great job at work. They don't go to work to be destructive. So what you've got to always keep in mind is when people are doing things, it's about growing from where they are. It's not just about perfecting what they do.
Yeah.
So when you have a growth mindset, mistakes are acceptable. It's okay. You talk about them. You put things in place. You move forward. But that is one of the biggest things you could do to move forward as a business.
Excellent. So the other things that really help to unlock people's potential around designing growth in roles, that opportunity to grow and develop within the way a role is structured.
So if you think about it, if we take your sales example, Janine, I'm a sales rep. I go into milk bars or whatever and I sell a few products. If, for instance, I want to grow, you might now take me out of milk bars or keep the milk bars because you know I feel safe there. And you're going to attach another part to my role now where I'm now maybe going to be moving into different areas like some of the bigger shopping centre chains. But you're not going to do it too much of it. You're just going to design my role enough that I begin to flex.
Yeah.
Because you're tailoring it to me. You know I like knowing what I do.
Yeah.
But you are going to move my role a bit more. You're going to make me do the splits a little bit. Stretch assignments are very different. That's like a boost strategy.
Yeah.
It is, you know what? I know you can handle something pretty different. And I know you're brilliant in milk bars. I'm actually going to pick you up. You're going to leave the milk bars for someone else and I'm going to put you over here. And now the skills and the capabilities you had in the milk bar, I want to see applied in this different environment.
I know, I've seen some really powerful stuff around this, and when it's aligned to your organisational direction as well, you get some really amazing uplift. I remember when I worked in medical devices and we talked all the time around we needed to change the way we did marketing and how did we do that. So we got people from the FMCG environment and said, okay, you do marketing in a really different way and it's a skill set we haven't learned. We're going to pick you up out of that environment. We're going to put you in medical devices. We're going to support you, but you're going to help shift us and we're going to help shift you in the way that you stretch and grow. So it has some really powerful impacts for the organisation as well as the individual when you do that well.
That's exactly where my mind went, the individual. If you're saying to me, I value you, I know you can do this and I'm going to make your role bigger or I'm going to stretch you more, man, I'm excited.
Yeah. So definitely thinking about outside the square for that particular person and really trying to challenge them in a different way that you both probably haven't been challenged in previously.
And what I love about that, to that point, Callie, is that now I'm not paying for another head count. I'm actually stretching my business using the talent I have and I'm investing in them.
Yeah.
Pretty.
It's a win-win, isn't it?
It's a win-win.
And then we talked about earlier around openly discussing mistakes to further promote learning. You know, if I think about where we work as a team, I don't really think we spend any time talking about a failure as such. We only ever talk about what are we learning.
Yeah, what are we learning?
Every time we do something.
Janine always says to me, that's a great learning for us, Marianne. It's a great learning. I'm like, yep, it's a learning. It is a learning.
Truly, at the end of the day, you know, for us, now there are other jobs where it's different. We're not saving lives, you know. We don't have somebody, everything that we do has that opportunity to take a little bit of risk and to figure out, okay, well, what does that tell us?
Yes.
What worked, what didn't? How would we do it differently next time?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what's the outcome for organisations that do all of this? They can be up to 3 times more profitable.
Woohoo.
If that doesn't get your CEO excited, I'm not quite sure what will. And their retention can be improved by 4 times. So if you think about what we talked about in terms of analysing the cost of turnover in your business, if you're talking about 2.5 times that person's salary is the true cost when you take into account the time spent on recruitment, the lost productivity while the role is vacant, the lost productivity while the person's coming up to speed, all of the other people
Extra
around
work,
them,
yeah, the extra
trying to
people
actually
doing it.
manage all of that. When you look at all of that, if you're improving your retention by 4 times, that's an impact on your bottom line.
Yeah, bring it on.
Not to mention, when you have people who are thriving and growing in an organisation, it grows your reputation, it grows your brand. When you have people walking around saying, I love what I do, I love where I work, that can only positively impact you. So let's have a little bit more of a deep dive into what does the traditional career path look like that you might have experienced in the past or might still be in your organisation versus what does a future focused career path entail. So traditionally, we would look at a step approach to a career. You would have clear roles that you must do before the next role. If I remember back in my earlier days when I was working in pharmaceuticals, we had a policy on what your career path was when you were a sales rep. You started as a product specialist, then you moved to senior product specialist. To do that, you had to have 2 years. You had to have a performance rating of 7 and above for each year. You had to show X, Y, Z behaviours, and then you got promoted. That promotion came as a 5% salary increase and an upgraded car. Then after another 2 years, if you ticked X, Y, and Z box, you got to executive product specialist, and you got slightly more incentives and another upgraded car, for example. It was very step-by-step.
Now, to that point, how many of us have seen people that we think are doing the exact same role as us, but they're called senior? And you look at them and you go, I could do what you're doing, but the only difference is they've been there longer, they've done their time, and now they're getting paid more. So from a business perspective, you are now paying more for tenure, but you're not necessarily growing the skill set that you've got in your team, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's a traditional approach.
And I wouldn't say necessarily that throw all traditional career paths out, there's no value to them. That's not the case. Some people really do, and some companies really do value these structures. What I am saying is think differently as well and think about what other career paths might look like in your organisation. And make sure that you're, even within these ones, you're very clear about why you're promoting people and what you're reinforcing in your organisation. Because with those come those incremental salary shifts as you move up. They're often connected to internal politics, so it's who you know, where your relationships sit. Sometimes the way that you are promoted is less well understood and tangible for people to actually go. And there's that sense of you get tapped on the shoulder and you become the anointed one.
Yeah.
So from a future focus perspective, career paths are a lot less linear. So, you know, as we talked about, you might be going from selling in a milk bar to moving into a totally different
you go to marketing
range. You might be going to marketing. Some of the most powerful career paths I've seen have been people who've started in HR, started in recruitment, gone into HR, then moved into sales, then shift over to commercial relationships, which still sounds a bit like sales to me, but and then she's ended up in a senior role looking after how we go to market in that particular organisation from a marketing perspective. And you look at that and go, 20 years ago, that would seem like a diabolical career path. So they're not just titles that people are looking at when they're creating those moves. They're sitting there and saying, okay, if I ultimately want that person to get to MD, for example, because I see those skill sets, I'm going to really think about what are the experiences I need them to have to get there. Not everybody's going to get to MD. It may be, I see you've got an amazing strength around analytics, and I can see that we could utilize that skill set in a completely different area of our business if I gave you the right experiences to get you there.
Yeah.
And that would engage you, motivate you, and keep you in an organisation where you're adding huge amount of value.
Some of the most progressive organisations actually talk to their people about their entire life. So it's not just about work.
Yeah.
So what are you trying to achieve at this moment in your life? That's the conversations their managers are having. And when they understand that, so some people may want to just travel right now, but they want a great job that really gets them thinking. Well, they don't want to move up. Actually, they want to stay where they are, but do different type of work and be paid differently for it.
Yeah.
So they're still learning, still contributing, but for what they want in their life, moving up's not going to work right now, or they don't really want it, quite frankly. So
doesn't motivate them.
it doesn't motivate them. But so understanding the picture of your employee is very, very powerful.
It is really interesting because I've had so many discussions with people where they're like, my manager really wants me to take the next step. I have no interest in it. And, you know, they're just missing that conversation.
Yeah.
So it's really important to make sure that you're not doing this because that's what you would want
For them, or what you want
what
for
you would
yourself.
have expected that they would want.
Yeah.
But that they're really helping to drive that. So some of the other aspects that you look at when you look at future focused is there's that sense of personal drive for their career, that sense of personal ownership. It's not just I'm on the conveyor belt and it's going in one direction. It's I have the power to create change in my career.
And if you think about it, in a traditional model, you kind of get tapped on the shoulder. Now it's actually you saying, I want this.
Yeah.
My role can look like this. Very different.
I like it. There's also a really strong opportunity around different ways to move. I can move sideways or up. And by the way, I'm going to expect recognition. So just because I'm being moved sideways doesn't mean, sorry, you know, there's no salary increase for you. Because what you're doing as an organisation is you're recognising that those skill sets are valuable to you. And it's not just when you become more senior in the traditional sense of the word that you add value to an organisation. Applying your skill sets that you've learned in one part into another part is of equal value, and we will reward that and look at how we compensate you accordingly.
Yeah, and just remember, when you're moving roles, you don't have to be perfect.
Yes.
You move to learn. That's the point of moving, not you've
Got it
entered
all
perfection,
together.
yep, and you've moved forward.
I love it. Now, when we look at some examples of those traditional versus future focus, I talked a bit about the traditional sales role, and we have the same sort of structures from a HR perspective. You come in as a HR assistant or a HR associate. You go and you get your first small business partnering opportunity.
Become a consultant.
Then you become a consultant. Then you might become a manager. And ultimately your goal would become a HR director. And then maybe you become a VP if you're really, going into the region or something like that. But whatever it is, you get to your dream job. And then at some point in time you retire and you're done. And you go home and if you're inclined, you play golf or tennis or whatever it is that is going to take you into your retirement. That is a perfectly valid career path, Don't get me wrong. And for some people on that journey, it really speaks to where they want to be and they're adding value to an organisation. What we're talking about though is that the career paths of the future can have a lot more flexibility and can factor into them a lot more experiences that add value to your organisation. It's really interesting, Marianne, you talked about, somebody might want to go and travel for a period of time. And in the past, as an organisation, it would be, okay, well, you want to go and travel, off you go, you've left us. Now, more and more organisations will look at that and say, well, actually, you're going to learn while you're travelling. And maybe, in fact, I can help you get a job in an organisation over and where you want to travel. Or maybe you can just take a sabbatical for a period of time and go and learn and know that when you come back to me at a point in time, if we can keep that relationship, you're going to bring more value to my organisation and I'm going to harness that value. I had a really interesting conversation here recently around maternity leave, because what I've noticed as every time I've got 3 children, so I've had 3 lots of maternity leave. And traditionally, when we think about career paths, it's okay, your career stops while you're on maternity leave and you come back in a really progressive company, you may get promoted while you're on leave or come back to a higher level job, and that's great. But in my experience, what I have learned on maternity leave has actually been hugely impactful in how I operate in my role.
Yeah.
And in fact, when I look at that as a HR leader in an organisation, I think for those people who are not going to take maternity leave, which will be many, what are the other ways you can experience that learning? I come back usually with a very different view of what my value is in an organisation, where I'm going to spend my energy and my time, because I have different priorities. But there'll be whole other ways people take those learnings. And in the past, I think we've been a little bit limited about how we would allow that to happen. If you're not going on a year's maternity leave, then we can't take a year without pay or any other kind of leave for that extended period of time, because where's the value? There's no requirement. So that's some examples. I've seen lots where people have, organisations have invested in people really changing their occupations altogether. One of the best HR managers I worked with, her background was IT. And she was ultimately on the path to become an IT director, and they realised that a really great opportunity for her was to move into HR and be a business partner, and that would give her a whole other element to her leadership.
Yeah.
So they brought her in for 2 years. She added a huge amount of value to the HR team because she looked at it from a very different lens, and then she took the value that she learnt in HR and took that back into her career as an IT director and ultimately a VP of IT. So it added value, huge value for her and huge value to the business.
And what's really beautiful about that is that's her career path.
Yes.
That's what she needed, working to her strengths.
Exactly.
So bringing it right back to the beginning, why would you do this? You do this to retain talent, to let them grow and actually move your business forward. And the picture on the right-hand side is actually more and more what people are finding. So if you're on the webinar and you're thinking about it, yes, you can have a traditional path, but also know when people are saying to you, if I want to ultimately be a particular role, what do I need to do to get there? Know that lots of people go there a different way, and it's more about saying, what do you currently have in your kit bag? What are the experiences you currently have? And what jobs would give you a different experience to get you more ready for the one that you really want to get to if you don't feel you're ready now?
And the interesting challenge for an organisation is, again, to help think about what that looks like from a remuneration perspective. Because I know in the past, we've moved people to what would maybe considered a more junior role, in that we want them to develop a really different capability, and it's probably going to be too challenging to do it at a more senior level. But when you can say to them, we value what you're going to bring to that role, and even though it might generally be at a lower paid level, we're going to continue to pay you for the value that you bring to it at that higher level, because we know that you're going to need that experience. We think you only need it for a year. We're not going to make you sit there for 2 or 3 years, because, you know, traditionally we think that that's how long you need to sit in a role. We're going to give you that experience for a year, and then we're going to move you up 2 levels, because that experience is going to add so much value to you. And again, to your point, it's around that individual, the value that they have and where they need to grow to help them ultimately get to that end state career point. Well, maybe not quite end state, because to that point as well, even in retirement, people don't go, okay, here's my job and now I'm gone. Even as people come into retirement, it's a whole other different discussion around where they add value in the organisation and how they're going to ultimately get to the point of retirement.
Yeah.
So that sort of brings us to the thinking around, where do you go with this? So if you've got some work to be done around how you think about career paths in your organisation, I think the whole point to what we're talking about today is there is no package we can give you that says, here's the career paths of the future, because they are all about each individual. They're about being able to talk to it and have a really strong discussion, and then about translating that into an action or a move for an individual. So there's no perfect approach that we can give you, or perfect framework, except to say that you need to build this as a part of the way you think about talent in your organisation.
And if you think about the roles that you have in your organisation, for those of you that have competencies, one way you could do this is actually say, for a particular role, these are the competencies you get. For another role, these are the competencies you get. So when you look at your competencies, you can then say, okay, and if you get these competencies in the role, these are the experiences you will get. So that way you can map. If you're in a discussion, they're just not customer facing enough, or they're not having the tough discussions, you can then go to that model to say, well, what role would give them the ability to have the tough discussions, so that you're either stretching them or you're shaping their role for growth. So that's one way you can build that framework.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so as you sort of wrap up today, finish your cup of tea and try to actually think about what might we do differently in our organisation, I would encourage you to think around, have we built career paths in our organisation based on the titles people get, or the experiences that they're going to gain through those roles? Do we know what experiences people will get by doing different roles? And that really speaks to what you were saying, Marianne, around, we often get clear about what do we need from you, but what is this role going to give to you?
To you, yes.
Do we listen to our people to understand what they want to learn and what's going to motivate them and interest them? And that comes back very much talking to that strengths and talking to how we're continuing to develop their strengths further. And have we allowed an environment of learning to take place to further develop our perspectives and keep our right talent? So that's that constantly celebrating the times when things don't go to plan because of the learning we're going to get from it. And I would probably add today to that list of questions is, what are some of the other things we would need to do differently to enable some of these pathways? So if we have a really rigid remuneration structure or incentive structure that at the moment is blocking us from making some of these moves or making it tough, what are some of the barriers we need to remove to make these discussions easier and to make it easier to make the moves that you need to make to keep the right people in your organisation?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay, well, that's our wrap up for today. So from Marianne, Kelly and myself, thank you so much for joining us today. Our contact details are there, and we encourage you to pick up the phone and call us or send us an email if you'd like to enter into a conversation. If there's some help that you want in any of these areas, we're always more than happy to talk about it. And we hope that you can join us for our upcoming webinars. Next month, we're going to be looking at capability ready. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, me too.
This is one of Marianne's passion areas around the 6 Bs in HR. What are they? And how do you apply them to your organisation? So this is all about talent.
Yeah, this is all about talent and the strategy. How are you going to build it, buy it, borrow it? When do you make those decisions? It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, it's very powerful. So we hope to see you, or in fact, hear you, or you hear us in that webinar. And thank you again for taking the time to join us here today.
Have a great day.
Thanks.